we started by looking at a question someone has asked. The question is, how would I use what I learned to protect data in a real world scenario? And we said that let's take one of the things that we've learned in this course, which is sensitive information types. The first thing you want to do in a real world scenario is to know what is that organization, to know what data your organization is processing. You want to know what data your organization is processing or generating. And we decided to use a case study of a school, right? And we asked ourselves, what are the type of data that a school would take or generate? And we came up with 11 types of data: name, age, date of birth, genotype, address, state of origin, results, the class, emergency contacts, phone number, parents or guardian name, gender. The list is endless, but we said let's work with this 11 type of data that a school will generate or will process, And then we said, what regulation or regulatory or framework would the school need to adhere to as a body that processes and generates data? And we looked at the Nigerian Information or Data Protection Law that speaks to PII. And then we're able to identify that some of this data we take fall under this PII category. For instance, name, address, phone number, parent's name. The next thing we did was to say to ourselves, okay, now that we know this data, right, that we process this kind of data, and that by regulation we need to adhere to a regulatory body because of this type of data, and the type of data that we process fall under this regulation. We now want to be able to classify the different data. So we came up with a case, different scenarios. Here we have 4 types of labels. Labels are not cast in stone. Labels are customized to your organization's nomenclature, naming convention, naming nomenclature. You can use anything. Some organizations will call public labels public or call them general labels. Some organizations will call confidential, and some will call them highly confidential, or some will have the both confidential but still have what they call highly confidential. Some organizations will have a label called restricted, and that restricted will have some form of encryption because it's not restricted. What defines your label is unique to that organization. And when we say unique, in the sense that when you come up with this suggestion, you will take it across your different change management policies or change approval bodies, and they will approve that the organization should adopt that type of labels. So don't cram labels. Labels are not cast in stone. They are unique to whatever you propose to your organization, and they want to adhere to it, and it goes into their policy. Now, in this case study, we said this organization wants to work with 4 types of labels. Now, remember, we're working with the sensitive information type that fall under the PII category, which is name, date of birth, right, genotype. And we found out that this type of data, we can see them in the registration form that the school gives out every school year. Now, school year is ending by the end of July, and they will be publishing this form again to students or to parents to register for their students. So one of the ways we can protect the organization and make sure that we're compliant is by targeting this registration form. Now, it goes back to what did we learn? We learned that to track sensitive information type, you need some form of patterns and condition and logic that will tell you about this sensitive information type. We did a refresher on the type of logics and patterns, and we said keywords, functions, regular expressions, and document fingerprinting, right? A couple of others. Now, to target this registration form that the school will be giving out in September, we said let's use the document fingerprinting because this is a templated form that the school uses all the time. And the school would always host this form on their SharePoint site. So one other thing you want to know is, while you have known the type of data that you process, you want to say, where do I keep this data that I process? It could be anywhere. You could keep your data in emails. You could keep your data in OneDrive. You could keep your data in file servers. You could keep your data in SharePoint sites. You could keep your data in Teams. Now, for this particular example, we've identified we want to track registration forms, and these registration forms are kept in a SharePoint site that the school has, right? And this SharePoint site that the school has is where all these forms, when they are filled, are saved. And the team that manages this is a group of people that are under the admin department, right? So we want to also confirm, do they have a user group that is already created for them? So the data solution architect, having gone through all this process, has summarized that the action point for us here would be to what? Create data labels, especially a data label called highly confidential. He wants us to create a sensitive information type that will target the school registration form. So we want to use the document fingerprinting. He wants us to apply this to the SharePoint site, and he wants us to assign it to the admin users, right? He wants the label. Again, that reminds me, beyond creating label, you also want policy. So he has asked us to create label. Well, labels do not action, do not tell, labels just tell us that this data exists. The policy is what tells the label what to do. So what do we want this label called highly confidential to do? Do we want it to say do not forward? Do we want it to say do not print? Or do we want it to say when the person is sharing this data, they decide what to do, what to tell the document? The organization can decide what they want. So we have all of these options. The label can be applied, but then the policy tells the label what to do. Now, as a solution architect, you've done this, and then you give it to your compliance administrator to effect, and that's where your compliance administrator goes to apply what you have said. So now you use Microsoft Purview. What do you want to do? The first thing you want to do is come to your sensitive information type. So you can see create sensitive information type, create fingerprint based sensitive information type. We can call it. So you see at this point you need to upload a template of a form. Right, you need to have the form template. Let me see if I have something. This is the sensitive form.
Sorry, are you sharing your screen? Because what I'm still seeing is the Word document.
Oh, really? The one where I was writing on?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Let me share my full screen now. But before I share, let me just quickly download the form. No, I'm creating a random form. Sorry. Any form. Just give me a minute. I'm opening a person. It can be a Microsoft form, it can be a PDF form, but I'm opening a production email. So just 1 minute. That's why I don't want to share. Once I take out the form from the email, I'll share. So we went to the Microsoft Purview, right? And then we came to sensitive information type. But we've agreed that because the school registration form is a template, you know how you just create a form that you use all the time, right? So we know that they have a form that is a template. We don't now want to worry about using keywords or functions or regular expressions. They have a form. So if you have a form, you can use what we call the document fingerprinting type of sensitive information type to track it. So that's what we've said we want to do here. And so we come here and say create fingerprint based, call it this can be anything, remember. It can be the service ticket that was used to send you the request. And then now it's asking you, fingerprint SITs are based on the fingerprint of a file. Please upload file for which you would like to create a fingerprint. And so I'm just going to take I have this form here that I use for something, right? And I'm just going to use this form. So what you have done here is to say that anywhere the system sees a document that was created based off this form, right, it would fall under the category of sensitive information type you are going to create based off this form. That's just what you're saying here. So when this form is distributed and filled, so let me hold on, I'm seeing the error. Oh, what does it mean? Valid does not form. Sorry. I'm straight up. Okay. I don't know I made that error before. If we come here, this school, you can see that we have school registration form as a sensitive information type. That is a fingerprint type of sensitive information type. So we have done the first task, which is create a sensitive information type. Create a sensitive information type. This second one, that's what we've done. So we use the fingerprint and we use the school form and we created this. Is that clear?
Yes, ma.
Yeah. So this is us saying that this form, all this data that we captured as the data here that this organization works with. Now, in what we are saying doesn't have it, but I'm just giving an example. So you're assuming that it's here. So let me try and just I need to add it to a SharePoint site.
So sorry to I was going to ask, is it that the system will automatically detect whenever any?
Is it me? I can't hear Osas again. Hello, can we hear him? I can't hear him anymore.
No, he
I
went
can't
off.
hear him too. I can't hear
Okay.
him.
So I know that for some of us, we probably have not used Microsoft 365 before, so you'll be struggling to understand what's the linkage in this. The assumption is that your organization is probably using a SharePoint or a OneDrive or Microsoft Exchange Online, right, to interact. So this thing is not abracadabra. So the understanding is that you're going to point this. So that's why inside here, we needed to identify location where you process data. And in our conversation, we said data is in SharePoint. So that I've created a sensitive information type is still not going to be able to do anything because we've not told it where to go and what we've created. Do you understand? We've only just created something. We need to tell it to go somewhere. So the assumption is that you, as an organization, when you collected this form, do you keep the form under your bedroom? If you keep the form under your bed, it's not going to do any difference to anybody. But as a school, when you collect a form, you keep it somewhere central. It's not unique to you. Joy is the admin officer in the office. And Nkechi walks up to me to say, oh, we want to make inquiry about the school. I have a son who wants to come into. They bring out the form and they give you to fill. Nkechi, when you finish filling the form and you give it to Joy back in the admin, what does Joy? Does Joy take the form to her house? And if I take it to my house, does that give your child admission? No. I need to keep that form somewhere so that data can be processed, and then a decision will be taken, and then it will be said your son has been granted admission. And when your son was granted admission, it was not said your son is granted admission to primary 1, primary 3, primary this. Now, the law is saying that because you are collecting people's PII information, you need to do XYZ to it. Now, you're collecting tons and tons of information. And as a data person, you're stressed, saying, how do I manage this? So that's where technology comes. Technology is an enabler of your manual process. So if you don't understand the manual process, you'll be expecting magic. What's the manual process? Someone walks into the school, we give them a paper-based form. They fill the form, we take it and we put it inside a file cabinet. Then we come in maybe during the week, someone takes out that file cabinet, looks at the form, goes through XYZ information, processes it, and comes up with an admission letter that is sent to you. Now, the law comes and says that because you are dealing with personal informations, and those informations are now classified as PII, they are saying you need to adhere to XYZ. Now, an admin officer, you process 100 admissions or 1,000 admissions. And you're like, when will I be able to finish all of this and make sure that we are compliant so they don't sanction the school? Then you go to your IT people to say, what can we do? IT says we have Microsoft Purview and we can use it. So you sit down to define. That's what we're doing. You need to understand that this is how technology is done. Technology is not just, I want to be a data. We're only enabling what is in existence. So when you sit down with IT says we have Microsoft Purview, but you need to be able to tell us where you are processing this data. Then they come, say one of the ways we process it is with this form. We give out this form every time a parent comes in. IT says, okay, fine, I'll create a SharePoint site for you. Give me this form. They take up the form, they upload it in the site, and they say, every time a parent comes, you open up this form and fill it. In some instance, you can even automate it. The world has gone global. You don't want to do paper. Place, they will share the SharePoint site to parents as a URL, maybe publish it on the website. So when the parents go to the website, they see a form, they fill. But what is happening behind the scene is that when they submit, that thing that's submitted behind the scene goes to a SharePoint site and keeps a copy. All of this might not be your purview because you are just a data person. You don't understand about automation. You don't understand about Power Apps. So that's why if you look at your project, they've put different people inside. The Power Apps person in IT will create the app that ties to the website that receives this form. Parents go to the website, I want a new student, they see a form, they fill the details, they submit. That form generates, saves itself and goes into a SharePoint site. And as soon as it lands in the SharePoint site, XYZ would have happened. So what is that XYZ? So you have now explained it to IT. Oh, the guys in the automation team have already automated this form for us. It's on the website. Every time you go, the IT guy says, okay, automation team, where is this database? We use a SharePoint list. Where is this SharePoint list? They will give them the URL of the SharePoint. So as a data architect, you're noting this thing. So this form goes to a SharePoint. Can I see a copy of this form? They give you the form. It's in a Microsoft Word document. So this is the template used to generate the form. Yes. All right. Who are the team that to manage this site? We have a group called admin users. That's it. Now you go to what does the regulation say about this kind of information? They are PII, so we call them highly confidential, or we call them confidential. Okay, for us, we're going to call them highly confidential because the form is not only dealing with PII, it's dealing with other things like genotype, this thing. So we'll not call it just confidential, we call it highly confidential. That's what you have done as your design stage. So what we're trying to do here is automate all this story that I've been telling the last 15 minutes. And I'm saying Purview will tell you, okay, fine, create your fingerprint based on that form. Then the next thing you want to do is to create your data label that you agreed.
Okay, thank you. Like when I asked you the question about why you use SharePoint, because I was wondering where our Power Apps developers where they are going to store the data, but like you've cleared most of my concerns. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So a Power Apps automation person can say, I want to use SharePoint list, I want to use service, I want to use whatever they want to use. You understand? You don't know because you are not able, but you need to ask that question. Because that place becomes the on your checklist where data is stored.
Okay, so that means our work is just take the URL of where they are storing the data and then apply
Sorry,
the
I didn't hear you. You were breaking. Can you come again?
okay. So I am asking. So our work as data security is to collect the link to wherever the Power Apps devs are storing information, and then that's where we'll
No,
now apply whatever STI we are creating, right?
I'll change it. The way you put it is not right. The way you put it is you're restricting yourself to textile as work. Your work as a data protection is to protect everywhere data is stored and processed. That's your work. So in this instance, you have a use case now called ABC, and that use case is to protect a data generated by a automation team that is developing a Power Apps. I'm saying always speak like that. Don't limit yourself to this program. As a data person, your job is protect everywhere data is processed and generated. But you have a use case. The use case is these developers want to develop a school. So what project are you in? Let me make it very real. What's the problem statement for the project team you are in?
Legal contract, to create a legal contract app to automate creation of a contract between users and maybe lawyers or something like that.
Good. So for you guys now, the Power Apps person is more interested in these are our lawyers. How do they when they engage with a client and they've understood what the client wants, right? What it means is that they need to prepare a contract. When they prepare that contract, because it's always containing sensitive information, the question is how do they manage the communication between themselves and the client? Because the client will say, okay, I'm about to go into a business with Osaze, and in this business, Osaze will pay me, we'll be having a sharing formula of 70-30. This business requires that we go into Zamfara to mine gold. And are you seeing we're sharing information? So the lawyer comes and says, okay, we're going to have an app. When people come to our website to engage us for contract development, they'll go to this website and they'll probably fill a form, and when they are done with XYZ, so in that form, this is me giving expo now to your team. In that form, it could be what is your request about, what's your business transaction, what's the duration. As a lawyer, you need to ask yourself, what are the questions that I would need to ask a client that I need to feed into a contract? And in that course, it could be things like payment terms, business terms, duration of the contract, termination clauses, and all of that. So when they have put all of those things, if it is a form, right, that they give to the guys, that information that they've collected goes somewhere, and that information, after they have done it, they use it to now generate a contract that they send to the client. The client reads it, makes any adjustment or accepts it, and then it saves into a final copy of a contract and stores somewhere. Now, because all of those information is in a Power Apps that has been generated by the team, you as the data processor is saying, I know you're engaging with a client and you're dealing with so many sensitive information. What type of information do you require? They will now tell you, we ask for their CAC number. We always ask for the CAC number of the company. We also ask for the names of the directors. We also ask for names of directors. So we ask for, what do they call this thing? Letter of incorporation. We ask for means of identification. And in this means of identification, we want only 3 types, because That's the only three types the law. We want either international passport, driver's license, or whatever. We ask for, because they have to deal with financials, we ask for BVN number. I think as you're asking these questions, can you tell me with what we have explained here, where this list? So are you seeing it? You are developing this list here. Are you following me, please?
Yes, I'm with you.
Yes. So you are building up your list. Now, because it's a project, you need to kill yourself. So you can just say, I'm okay with 5, I'm okay with 6, I'm okay with 7. But the moment you develop this list, you now know that, okay, we're dealing with sensitive information type, and this is the category of this sensitive information type. Now, you now ask the Power Apps person, how do you collect this information? Do they go to a form that you give them to fill, or do they just send this thing via email to you? And when they send it to email, you now go to fill the contract. This contract, you have a contract template that you just impute this information, or is it for every new client you generate a new contract? They will say, we are going to be working with a contract template. We're also going to be working with a form. Automatically, when you hear template form, you save yourself stress. You say, so I don't need to look for patterns and reg expressions. Form. So in my head, if I'm in your shoes, I will use document fingerprinting as one of the ways to show what I have learned in class. So I will tell them, this form and template, where are you going to store them? And they will say, we're using SharePoint list, we're using Dataverse. Good. So the moment you're doing this, you're listing all your things, then you now create your checklist. In that, your checklist will be 1. Sorry, my pen has gone off. I'm just giving an example. So you have your checklist there. So this will now be also be on your presentation. So you will say, when you're doing your presentation, you'll be saying, we're engaged all stakeholders, and one of our stakeholders here were the Power Apps and Power Development team. We wanted to understand what they have automated for the lawyers, right? The lawyers are the end users here who generate data and process data. And so we wanted to understand from the lawyers how they what the Power Apps team has automated for them. In the conversation, we identified that these lawyers require sensitive information types such as, you now start writing it, CAC, letter of incorporation, director's name. I'm just giving an example. Now, after we've identified that they deal with this sensitive information type, we found out that they capture this data using forms and templates, right? And these forms and templates, they store them in SharePoint. Now, having understood the sensitive information type, where this data is captured, and the storage location, we went further to now say that this kind of information, are there any regulatory laws that we need to comply to? Go and read what the NITD laws talks about this kind of data. It just helps show that, and you now find out that PII, they are under PII, I'm just giving a rough example, I'm not sure. And then you find out what did the law say about PII, how you should protect it. That would be my next research. Once you come back on what the law says, you now say, based on this, we decided that we would create sensitive information type using document fingerprinting. Now, when you're doing your presentation, you don't need to now go too much. You just put fingerprinting. Now, when you're doing your presentation, is where you explain. Document fingerprinting is a type of way that we identify sensitive information type using existing forms or templates that are the foundation of generating those data. We also decided that we'll label this type of data as highly confidential. Now, to apply what you are doing now, because this is you doing the paperwork, now to apply it in the work, you now go back to the Powerhouse people and say, can you please give us access to this SharePoint site where you are storing this? So this is where, in a real world scenario, you as a data security person in there, there's this person in the team in security that should be called the identity security person, because that's the person that helps you with defining role-based access control. So for those of you who don't have this experience, you might struggle here, but this is just all you need to do based on this project. All you will need to do here is to just say you need access. They will give them your own account, because this is not a real life scenario. Give them that account that was created for you in the tenant and say, give me access to your SharePoint site. Now, if they don't have, because I saw today in the call in the morning, some people were requesting for access. If they don't now have, they might not even be the ones to give you access. You just list it, what you need to do, and you send to your project coordinators to say that this account, so if your name is Joy, I don't know. If your name is something is funny happening. Sorry. So if your name is whatever account they gave you, just say we need access or to be SharePoint admins. Or maybe they've given you access, so you don't need to key yourself. When you go to create the labels, you will see if you can see that site. But you tell them that I need the URL. I need the URL of the SharePoint site. So you'll be talking to the automation guys. This location where you are storing, this location here where they are storing this data, if it is a SharePoint list, can they give you the URL? You need that URL. If it's a data source, whatever, can they give you what the name of that data source, whatever it is where they are storing this thing, can they tell you what it is, so that when you're going to create this thing, you can point it there. This is now in actual implementation, but you need to define this on paper first for your presentation before you now go into the implementation. Did this help you get clarification?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
So I've shown you how to create the form and this thing. Then the next thing is to create the label. All of these things are just cosmetics. You can choose anyone. Now, can you see? Let's come here. You want to define the scope of your label, right? So can you see here where it's talking about different types of database? So it depends on what your guys used, right? But here, files protected in Word. Sorry, I need to enable this feature somewhere so that we can apply it to SharePoint site. But does this help you see what I'm talking about, where you apply this part, storage location? So you can see creating the label. It will ask you, so is it in files? Are they going to use this label for files, for emails, for meetings? We said SharePoint. It's showing that I've not turned it on, so that's why it's grayed out. I need to turn it on. Or for schematized data assets, which are like your SQL database, your Cosmos. I get it. So if you're using deep down DB databases, you can enable it to. It will be able to go there and map those labels to it. Please, I need to be sure that we are following.
Absolutely, it's making sense.
Yeah. So then the next thing you want to do is we didn't put it in our paper planning. This says that the protection settings you configured will be enforced when the label is applied to items in MQuick. Control who can access and view the label items. Apply content marking. This is again is all choice. Do you really want to apply content which is watermarks? Protect things meeting configure. So this is more around protection. So you can have a label that does not have protection. Now let's go back here so we can explain that. Remember here, I said restricted, encrypted. So you can have labels that are just labels with actions that say do not print this, but you can have labels that have encryption. So that's where this setting speaks to. So if you see, I can go next without checking. Sorry. You can see that I did not check anything here. Do you see? Because I can create labels without enforcing all of this. Or I can come here and say, I want to control who can access and view the labeled items. But I'm not putting any form of protection. So that's when it gave me access control.
Oh, sorry. The question I was going to ask then before my internet tripped off was, after identifying those sensitive information, you've classified them on the registration form, and you put it to SharePoint. If those same details those data are used somewhere else apart from SharePoint, will the system pick it?
If you did not tell it to, it will not pick it for you now. Or
Okay.
it might just so there are two things. Because the way Microsoft works, everything is the moment you've turned on information protection, it would rather tell you that you have those kind of data existing. Remember Content Explorer and Trainable Card. So it will tell you that you have this kind of data in this location, but you're not protecting them, you're not tracking them. I see. But that label that you are creating, and remember, you're creating your label because you want to append your label to a particular type of thing. There are two different things. That I want to know or protect everything in my organization, or I have a specific type of information I want to tag. So in this one, we're saying the school registration form itself, we want to tag it. We're not saying that in totality, everywhere that there is those type of sensitive information type. No, we're saying that we want to narrow down. We know that we collect name in different places, but we're saying that we found out that this one of the first point of place that the school collects name is through registration form. A teacher can come into class and just say, oh, I want to collect your assignments, and collect name and this thing and put it in the report card. That's another place. So you keep having different use cases, but we're saying that for school registration form, we know that they collect data there and these PI data are there. So we want to first of all target all the registration forms, and we want to use a label called highly confidential for them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So if you finish that one, you can now come back and say, okay, in the clinic, whenever they come, students have come, the boarders, the people who are boarding house students always have to go to the clinic and they fill a form. You go to clinic people too and sit down. What do you give them, a form, or do you give them a health card? What do you do? This health card, where do you keep it? You look at that whole process again and define again how you want to manage that data that is collected and processed. That's a use case. You go to the boarding house master. Do you at any time engage the students and collect? Say, okay, yes, so those of them that keep, when I was in boarding house, we keep our money with, I don't know how it's done now, we keep our money with our house masters. They used to have a book, and when our parents give us pocket money, they will register it. So that's information, that's data being processed. You look at all those processes. Where are you keeping this information? How are you processing it? I need to protect it. I need to use a label to identify that this kind of information is for the house masters, and I'm going to create a label maybe called general. So even though it's general, but I want to call it general house. So anytime I see this information here, I know that even though it has name, but it doesn't have any other sensitive information to it because it's tagged house master general. But whenever I see highly confidential, I know that it has confidential information, even though I'm seeing someone's name there. I see what the label is helping you to do. It's helping you to point different places where you're processing data, and for you to be able to see at a glance at which place you have the ones that are sensitive, or you have the ones that you've classified general, even though they might be called sensitive, but it can be for general purpose. And you can now point it to, okay, this one is email, Teams, this one is SharePoint. So when you enable control access, these are the things it allows you to do. It allows you to assign permissions. It allows you to set when the person's access will expire. So in this kind of instance, you can say that when an information is sent out, especially when it's with external people, the data can, I think the content can expire. So it's all in your project. It's all up to you how you want to jazz it up. What they just want to understand is some of the new things you learned. How are you applying it? So look for key things, sensitive information type, document fingerprinting, patterns, those key things that stand out for you, and look at your use case and see, how do I want to apply it? You might not be able to apply everything. All sections might not be applicable to the use case you have given. So in this instance, I will remove control access first. Let's just finish this and just focus on, I'm creating a simple label. Here is auto labeling again. I can say this highly confidential. Do we want to make it auto label? Maybe if you have a small use case in a team. So in this school one, we know the form is handled by admin people. It's not, the form does not, a teacher does not give a parent registration form. A teacher does not, PA to the principal does not give a parent. All registration forms originate and are processed from the admin office. So we can go there and say, let's do auto labeling, because they are the ones that, even if somebody gives them registration form, it must go through admin. So the moment it comes to admin, want to do auto labeling, then you can turn this on. And if you do this in your project, you just explain why you chose this option. And then here you're looking for conditions that will help you put auto labeling. If you don't use that, this is the group aside that we didn't turn on here. I would check why I didn't turn on, but I don't think it's a big deal because we're almost done with the class. This was SharePoint sites. And this is if you were using, I said, databases. Again, it's up to what your Power Apps people are using. And that's it, a simple label that, in this instance, I was copying file, email, and meetings because I didn't turn on for SharePoint site. And I've created the label. So this label by default will go to everybody in the organization because I didn't narrow it down. And anywhere it sees, I've not yet actioned, I've not told it what to do, but this label, I'm just saying that this label is for files, emails. I'm going to use it on files and emails, this highly confidential label. Now, I've created a label. The next thing I want to do is publish my label, because just creating my label does not necessarily publish it. So I created this label. Again, I've explained this separately, that you can be in an IT team, but everybody should not have access to what you want. Do you want to add this in your project? It's up to you. If you want to jazz it up and say, oh, for instance, if you have 5 people in security in your team, you people can decide that you want to infuse that conversation to the project team to say, we're 5 in the IT team. However, only 2 people are allowed to manage this policy because it's a sensitive policy. So for you that is in legal, you can say the legal team is dealing with high network client customers, and this type of data is sensitive. So the IT team decided that only 2 people in the IT department would have access, and so that's why we created an assigned admin unit. Or you leave it to the full admin unit. It's all up to how you want to jazz up your presentation. Again, users, when the Power Apps people were developing the app, who did they tell you that it was supposed to be assigned to? In the school use case that we did, we said a group called admin. It's up to you guys now to go back to them to say, when you have defined, say we want to use in fact, the Power Apps people would have defined who they are tying the application to, right? In this case, we use case study here, we use about school. We tied it to an admin department, and we just created the name, fictitious name for it, and said admin office users at contoso.com. So depending on whatever user group that was created for you, you can come here, and then that's where you add it. So you say specific users. If you say all users and group, it points to everybody in the organization. Never do this, please, in real life production. Never say all users and group. Even if they tell you for all users, create a small group, test it, sign up your UAT, let it be working before you come and do all users and group, please. That thing can sack somebody. So this is in this my tenant, you can see all users, right, and all groups. So I can just look for a group. Let me look for a group that I know that I have. I have this group, and I can say group. And if I wanted to add specific users, I can come and add, these are individual users that I want to add, or a group. So you can see it. And then I can say done. Now configure settings for the labels included in this policy. These are cosmetics, so just follow. It says user must provide a justification. I've talked about this. Some organizations will say the policy is not going to be enforced. It's there, but if users want to downgrade it, so if a user wants to say, and most times you see this when you're not doing auto labeling, because when you don't do auto labeling, it means you have left the labeling to be at the user's discretion. So if I'm sitting in your project team, I will want to understand what formed your decision not to use an auto labeling and what formed your decision to use an auto labeling. Because I just want to pick your brain to know that you understand that users can bypass the system. So I want to understand if you know scenarios where you can use auto labeling and where you don't have to use. And if you tell me you don't use auto labeling, I want to understand then do you give users this option to just put, so that you can even understand your users, why are they not using a particular label and why are they changing it. So if you put this, even though you did not use auto labeling, it will force a user to explain why they don't want to use the highly confidential that this label will impose on that data when it sees it. So if the person is probably switching it from highly confidential to general, it's going to ask you, then tell me why, because the system is saying this is a highly confidential document and you are saying no, it should be general. Why? But if you don't put this and somebody switches from highly confidential to general, you won't know why. The person will switch and it will go because you did not force auto labeling. This will require users to apply labels to their, this is the enforcement one. If you don't check this, it will not enforce users. All right, it will just put a label, and whether users put label or not, the email will go, the document will go. Again, you want to understand why somebody will not take some of these action points and why someone will take. It's all up to you to decide based on the use case you have. This is tied to Fabric and Power BI content. So if the data location that you are dealing with, right, in your team, if the Power BI guys, so you have two cases as security to work with. The Power BI guys are developing, the Power Apps guys are developing an app. The Power BI guys are processing. Are you seeing it? So this is where you hear me use generate, process. Power BI people are processing data because whatever data they would have set, they would have generated to be able to do their dashboard. They would have generated it from wherever and they will keep it somewhere. So you need to ask the Power BI people too, where are you keeping your data that you're using to create this dashboard, that you're using to explain this our application? And that location is also where you want to create labels and apply labels, right? So they will tell you wherever they can. Then you say require users to apply a label to their Fabric and Power BI content. So this is where if you create a label for the Power BI use case, you will need to check this to the users. And then this one is just for help desk, right? Please, do you guys understand this page or I should explain it again?
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Franca.
And NJ. Yeah. Are you sharing your screen? I can't see anything. And I've gone out, I've left twice and come back.
Yeah, I have not seen.
Can't see anything. Is it only me?
I can see your screen.
Can see. I've left about 3 times now and come back.
Hold on, let me stop sharing and share again. That will help you. But if every other person is seeing, then I'll just stop.
Okay, thank you.
I've reshared now. Can you see now?
Oh, I can't. Okay, let me go out. Okay, yeah, I can see your screen now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So for the people who are for the project, again, like I've said, I've explained for the automation side. For the Power BI side, remember the Power BI guys would be seen as data processors because they are taking XYZ data and processing it. So wherever they've gotten their data sets from, they'll be keeping it somewhere to point. So what you can do is to, for the Power BI guys, define again, like here we define for the application guys. I will sit with the Power BI guy and I will be asking, my checklist will be this. Security people, I've given people so many expo. People don't wow us. I'll flog people. My checklist will be, where are you storing? Give my handwriting, please. Osaze will say I'm always too fast. Sorry, sir. Storing your data. Right? Again, wherever they tell you that they are storing your data, let the person not tell you, I'm storing it on my personal laptop. You cannot protect it on personal laptop. I get in. Tell the person to go and request for either a SharePoint site or a OneDrive, right? If the person says, I created the data sets when I got when I did my research from the internet and I created my Excel, I'm saving it on my laptop. You cannot protect anything on person's laptop. Unless, follow me, unless the person's Outlook, unless this person's Excel, the person is logging in here using the account that was given to you from the project. So don't let people make you feel like as if you don't know what you are doing. So if the person kept the data on their laptop and is using the Power BI desktop, right, to generate their data, what you should be asking is that the account they gave people for the project, does that account have Office 365 so that the person will log into the Excel using, are you seeing this my Excel now, using that their account that's when you can push your policies to that use case and be able to explain. If not, for those kind of people, just do slides. Don't kill yourself, because that person in Power BI now might be working in isolation of the system, and you'll be cracking your head how to tie it. The person's Outlook and the person's Excel can be their personal one. I don't know if you're getting. Meanwhile, you are using a tenant that is tied to at XYZ, and you're trying to push policy and things not working, and you're having headache. Do you people get what I'm explaining, please?
Yes.
Because I know that the guys in Power BI might be using the Power BI desktop, and the Power BI and the data they will generate on their Excel, they'll be logging into their Excel using their own personal account and not the tenant account that was given for you. If it's not the tenant account, no matter what you create here, it will not work. So again, that's why in solution architecting, we have what we call stakeholders engagement. In stakeholders engagement, you always want to understand, what are you doing? Because if I don't understand what you're doing, I won't be able to protect. So engage with the Power BI guys in your team to say, how do you want to respond to this project? They will tell you, we've created an Excel sheet, and this Excel sheet, right, we are going to use our own, I'm going to use my own a Power BI desktop that I've installed on my system. So you ask the person, how do you log into your Excel? It's okay if the person is not using the tenant, because I don't know if this tenant ID they gave you is licensed for Excel. Whatever the person is giving you now, this is a bit tricky, but just if they say they're not logging in, come back to me in Discord. I will help you guys in that one, and I will explain to the faculty lead, Madam J, why I had to help out there. What we will do will be to add that account as a guest user on the tenant, right? Because this account
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we have Excel on the tenants that they give to us, can't they just upload their data on that Excel instead of us adding a user? There's an Excel sheet added to that space.
So the policy that the policy that the guys you want to create is not necessarily tied to. There are two different things. Hold on. You see here. Remember, my system does not flow. You see this place, users and group. This is tied to account. Are you following me? This label is tied to an account. So if the label is saying, even though it is saying that I can do it on files, this thing, it is still tied to who is this user. So even though we've said here that let's go away. Even though we've said here that this label applies to file, right? And file is Excel falls under this file. But when we are publishing the label, we're saying it is for this users that we put here. So if that person, the account is not in this category of users that you are going to put here, it doesn't matter if the person is using an X. Are you getting it? So the question is, the tenant account, we can drop it for Lara to say, the tenant account. Madam Franca, can you help us with that information? Can you ask Lara that the tenant accounts, do they have Office apps assigned to them? Example, Excel. If they come back to us, yes, then what we should say to the Power BI people is that, please, for the project, can they log into their Excel using the tenant account? Once they do that, you in data security, your life is easy. It means that whatever you push here would take effect on their Excel. Did you get that?
Okay, sorry. NJ, you want me to find out something? No.
Yes. Help me ask Lara
Okay.
that this tenant account that we gave the students, right?
Yeah.
Does it have Office assigned to it? So for instance, can I use it to log into Excel?
Okay.
The reason
Okay.
is that I think you people in Power BI, right? Your guys are going to be using the Power BI desktop, right?
Yes, Power BI desktop.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
mention something like that.
Yes, they are going to be using Power BI desktop. So
Yeah.
many of them are going to be working with their Excel offline. And if that,
Okay.
yes, and if the tenant account for the project is not what they're using to log into the Excel, the policies the data security will push will not apply. That's one. So is to ask them that, please, does that tenant give, because it's a tenant account, guys, the probability is high that it will not have. So if they come and say it doesn't have, then we will change the way the guys will show the value of data security to Power BI. So let's make progress. What other way can we do it? So this is just for you to understand that you can add different users group here. So back to my checklist here. You say, where are they storing the data, right? If they say offline in their laptop on an Excel, then that's where we need this information that we're trying to get. Then they must log in using the project account, because that's what you would see and apply policy. Another way that they can do it is, which again I know most of them will prefer, is to upload their data set, right? They can upload their data set to a repository, which can be SharePoint or OneDrive. But I feel like number 2 is very complex. This number 1 for me is very easy. All they need to do is log into the Excel. But just ask these questions and then we can take it up from there on how you define it for them, so that you can apply security controls to the Power BI guys and include that in your presentation. So once we've added users and group, we come here to say, I've explained this again, I've said what it is. So in this instance, this is where you say you require users to apply a label to their Power. So if I don't apply this to the users, right, they won't be able to. So what this will force them to do is that if they are using their account to log into the Excel, it will now force them to use a label, because we have forced them to use the tenant account and we enabled this. Okay. Apply a default label to documents. Now, what we're saying is that by default, all documents should have a default label, and then we can now enforce any of the labels. We will say apply this, because that's what we are creating, and then when they want to change it, they can change it to, this is the default. This is just saying that if an attachment, this is a real life, so in your project, this might not be applicable. But in a real life scenario, you want to begin to look at email communications, because this is email. I can send you an email that I have classified highly confidential, or I've classified general, but the attachment is a confidential attachment. In this instance, is we're speaking about inherit labels from attachments, inherit highest priority labels from attachments. So if the attachment has confidential and the email has general, if I enable this, automatically that email becomes confidential, because the attachment on the email has a highest priority. So that's what this means in real life. It's not going to be applicable in your project, I would say, because you are working more with Power Development and Power BI, not more around a modern workplace. Maybe if we had the track of M365, you would have worried about that. So this is Power BI.
Excuse me, MJ. Sorry. Okay, I asked Laura to please come in briefly to. Yes,
is she here now? Is she here?
You know, she's coming in. She said, yeah, she's here. She's here now.
Lara,
Okay.
Omolara,
Um,
can you
Yeah.
please
Good afternoon.
Yeah, can you please, Omolara, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can. Good
Can you
afternoon,
please,
Jen.
yes, can you please find out from MJ if the tenant account has office license assigned to it? And when I mean office license, like Excel, Word.
Okay, hold on. Let me briefly check that.
Yeah, but or if you have access to any of the tenants, if you log in, I can direct you on where to check for it, because that helps us know how they will apply their security policies to the Power BI use case.
Okay, give me one who is currently available. They should give me their team. What team do they belong in? So we'll just check it together and I'll share my screen and we'll check it together.
Can I share my screen?
No, you will
Not
see.
yet. Please, what
You
group
will
are you?
just give her the group. She has the back end.
Group A.
Okay, group A. Give me a few minutes to share your screen.
Okay, just before you share your screen, let me finish this, and then we give the policy a name, say next, and that's it. We have published a label that we created. Now, quickly here, what did we do? Just a quick recap. We identified the sensitive information types. We said we're going to give it a label. I don't know why this thing keeps taking my. We said we're going to give it a label. Then we identified that we create a label called highly confidential. We created the SIT document. We applied it to SharePoint and applied it to users. The same thing. This is for the lady who talked about her project, but it's the same method. We identify the sensitive information type, create it, identify the location if it's SharePoint, but in this instance, I use email, and then apply it to users, and that's basically for labeling and tying it to sensitive information type. Lara, do you want to take over, and then we'll continue once you're done?
Joy, you can check your chat. Send you a message. Because it's taking a while from here. That's on Teams, I mean.
I can't see anything, sorry.
Okay, I'm in now, so I'll share the screen. Hi, Joy.
Yeah?
Can you see this?
It's still rolling. Okay, fine. Go to, just do show all by the left where you have Sure. Or yes, please. Okay, just pick one of the users.
Who
Double
is
click.
in Purity here?
Or says, are you the one in group A? Who says group A? Can you call your name so that she can
Yes,
find?
I'm in group A.
Okay, so check Osaz. That's him here. That one. Open it. Even though he's not the security people that needs the license, it's the Power BI people, but it's fine. Let's just check. Go to license and apps. Well, the security people might need it in case they want to test what they are doing before. Nah, it doesn't. It doesn't. Okay, expand the place that says app 74. Scroll down. Keep scrolling. Scrolling. Yeah, it has it. Hold on. Scroll up. Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise. It has it. Yeah, it's fine. It has it. It has it. Thank you.
Welcome. Which of the apps are you looking for? Let's check it together.
I've seen it now.
Okay, so they have Excel, they have Word.
Yes, exactly. It has it. It's there. It has it. All right. So
Official.
all we need to, so Lara, we need to please notify the Power BI people that they need to log into their Excel with the tenant account while they are doing their Power BI projects, please.
Very well, we'll notify them. We also mentioned it during the Q&A session because it's one of the apps they can use even from Teams directly, but we'll be sure to notify them again.
Yeah, because that's what will allow the security team's policy work. Thank you.
Right. Got that. Well done.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lara.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I have a question. Thank you, Lara.
Okay. Do you want a question for Lara so that Lara can go, or it's and then we can continue, or is a question for her?
The question is for you.
Okay. So Lara, thank you. You can drop off if. Thank you. All right. So let's continue, guys. Yes. Next question. I believe with this, we've been able to explain basic things you can use in real life scenario and with your project. So please go on.
My question is, in the creation of the groups, who are those going to create it? Is it us or the Power Apps guys?
So when you identify the groups you want, just do an email to Lara's team. You can see she's an admin and they'll create it for you. So for you're in a group. You're in a group, right? They put you security with application people, with Power BI people. So I will be expecting that you will have 2 groups or maybe 3. One for your test, one for your real life. And when I mean real life, for your project presentation, you want first of all test what you're doing. And then if it works, then you replicate it to production. So I'll ask for, if I'm you, that I'll break it in 2 places. A policy, a label for the application development, a policy label for the Power BI. That's how I will do it. Now, the policy label for the application, the policy label for Power, all you can do is for your test, just have one test group and put yourself. So if me and you are in the same team and I am in Power BI, you are security, and maybe Osaze is in Power Apps, I'll create one test group and put the 3 of us inside, and I'll use it to assign to my label and policy, and we'll do our test. While once we test and it's okay, I will now ask them to create 2 additional groups for me. One that will be, I will add the people in the application team who, when they are demoing the application, they will now be demoing the security function. So when they are done demoing the application, you will now demo how that, because when they are doing, you see how your label is either showing somewhere or is allowing you to be able to track, depending on what you want to demonstrate in your project. And for the Power BI guys, the same thing. So you need to say, what do I want to demonstrate? Yeah. So that's another thing. You need to say, what do I want to demonstrate? Like I said, you want to first of all show that you understand what you have learned, some key points, call it out, and then during the presentation, there are many ways you can want to show. You might want to show from Context Explorer identifying that sensitive information, or the label showing on the Excel of a Power BI person, or the label or the dashboard capturing that apps that was developed. It's all born down on what you guys want to show to the guys after the project team, after you've explained the concept and how you arrived at what you wanted to do. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay, do we have any other questions, please?
Yeah, I have a question. Can
Yes,
you
please
hear
go
me?
ahead. Yes, I can.
So, my question is on my project. So, basically, I think I reached out to you privately before now. Everything we did during classes were about SITs, creating labels, and securing data. But my project is entirely different. So, I don't know what exactly I'm supposed to do, because my role is basically I'm supposed to define roles and set up role-based access control using Azure, Microsoft Entra, and then I'm supposed to ensure audit login, approval permissions, and regular access reviews. So I don't think we did anything that has to do with roles. We basically used Purview for everything we did, but yeah, I'm seeing Microsoft Entra, so I don't know. That's my issue. That's my first concern.
Okay, so I called this out in the session they had this morning. I had brought it to their attention that either probably due to editing, they didn't remove that part when they didn't understand that I wasn't going to teach identity in this class. So what was agreed was implement what you have learned in relation to your project team, and that's what you'll be presenting in your project. So ignore the role-based access control will come around when you are explaining, because when you are applying your data policy, I don't know, when you join the class, you see that you need to still apply it to whether users or groups. So that's where you can now explain the role-based access control, but still focus on the whole data labeling classification as what you need to do for the project. I don't know if that answered you.
Yes, it did. But then the other question, so I was in the class and then I understood, but then I want to be clear on something. So for example, let's assume whatever I want to protect, the information is stored in OneDrive, because I'm familiar with OneDrive. And then let's assume that's where um maybe the data from the Power BI, I don't know, it's in OneDrive. So basically I've created the labels, the SITs, and then I've implemented it on that document for it to apply there. So
Okay, first of all, tech is again, the challenge I see here is people want to learn. People expected the project to be go and create label. That's not real life. And I don't know how many of you joined the class when we started this morning. And I love the question Osaze asked, because that's what is real life. Nobody's going to ask you to create label, because you will bring down your organization if all you do is just go into your purview and create label. You cause problem. You would cause a major incident. You need to sit down and understand. The first thing is, what data are we processing and what data are we generating? So to your project question, Janet, what is your project topic? I'm going to do this just to make life easy for everybody. If I explain this and people still don't understand, there's nothing I can do, because I'm going to practically answer some of these projects here, just to let you guys know that it's not as hard as you're thinking, but you wanted us to just ask you, create label, create this, and that's not real life. So I need someone to give me their project question, and I will take it again from the top.
Okay, MJ, this is Janet. As I said earlier, like, the whole thing was overwhelming, because what Miriam said, they said we should activate audit trail, access roles, and there's so many encryption, decryption, and that's why I even asked you who is going to create the group and all these things, because like I didn't like see a flow. But as you've started explaining, and at least I've understood, like, to some extent what we are supposed to implement, and since you've said we should implement what we've learned so far, I think that's just what to go ahead and do. But for the audit trail and the encryption and the decryption and the access rule, like, I don't know those ones. So That's okay.
But we taught audit trail now in Purview. We taught audit trail. I'm just saying that I totally agree that they must have mixed up the questions. But if you understand that we're just trying to get you guys to see how you can apply what you have learned. It's not even role-based access control. You still need it. You need to define roles. So in the way that they have put it is what the confusion is. But if it's about applying what you have learned, we talked about role-based access control. You're not going to assign a policy to everybody. Even when you're creating a policy, it's going to ask you, are you applying it to all users or are you applying it to select users? And your project question is very scoped. So at that point, we want to see if you will go and say all users or if you understand that your project use case is very scoped, which is why I'm asking again, can somebody give me one project? But if you guys don't want to give, it's fine. I'll leave you to do your presentation.
Can I give
Like
you
when you meant projects, you meant the content of the project, because that was what I was trying to explain to you a while ago. Or you want like the document? What are you looking for when you said we should give you a project?
It's confusing. So I said, ask me that your project question. Let me help you know how to answer your project.
Okay. The overview for my project was we're supposed to create an expense management app using Microsoft Power Platform. The statement, is it the problem statement? An organization's current expense management processes faces several challenges that hinder its efficiency. The organization struggles to manage its expenses effectively, leading to a lack of transparency, delayed disbursements. Hence, the organization is looking for a way to streamline its expense management process, optimize its financial operations, and reduce the overall cost of managing expenses. That's the problem statement. Then we have tax. I listed my tax for you a while ago.
Sorry, can you take it from the top again?
Okay, so the problem statement is an organization's current expense management process faces several challenges that hinder its efficiency. The organization struggles to manage its expenses effectively, leading to a lack of transparency, delayed reimbursement, and increased processing time. Hence, the organization is looking for ways to streamline its expense management process, optimize its financial operations, and reduce the overall cost of managing expenses. The objective is to develop an expense management app using the Microsoft Power Platform and to streamline the process, optimize financial operations, and reduce the overall cost of managing expenses. That's the overview. Then I stated my role for you that was a bit confused, which was define roles.
So, yeah,
But you said we should use that.
So no problem. Let's write it. Define rules. Audit. We'll put it somewhere here. Leave it here.
So I think my first confusion was the fact that it said we should use Azure, Microsoft Entra. Is it the same as Purview? Because that was the first thing I was a bit confused
It's not the
about.
same, and that's why I said that that's where they must have made a mix up, right? They didn't. If they when they put Entra, they caused the confusion. If they've left define roles, define audit trail in relation to data security, then it makes more sense because that's what we were looking at. But like I said, ignore that and take whether define roles, whether define audit, but just say, how do I apply what I have learned to this problem statement? You are in a team that needs to optimize finance operations. And so the Power App guys, to optimize these operations, they have said they want to develop an expense management app.
Yes.
And when the organization was building the team, they brought in data security there because they are concerned that if we're going to be developing an expense management app, we need to ensure that our data is protected. So they brought you into that conversation and you are in the team stakeholders. And while having the conversation, the Power Apps team is coming up with their workflow as to how they want to automate this expense management app. The first thing you need to ask as a data person is that what type of data are we going to be generating and processing? So off your head, a typical expense management app, and I'm asking the whole class, what are the kind of data that they'll be generating and processing
Financial statements.
for expense management? I don't think so.
A budget.
Maintenance, expenses in maintenance, the maintenance fee or something like that.
I don't understand that, please. Did you say expense maintenance? That's what I'm saying.
Maintenance fee, you said what are the possible expense?
No, no, no. They want to develop an expense management app. So I'm asking you, what do you think? Now, you might not know it because you're in data, right? But because you need to understand what to do, you need to ask yourself so that when you sit with them, they will tell you, the guys who are going to develop the app will be sitting with the business case. Maybe it's the finance team that asked for it. Maybe it's another team that said, well, these are real life scenarios projects we gave you guys. So if you're sitting with an automation team as a data person, you want to know this app, what kind of data are you going to be collecting? They will collect the name of the person, probably the department of the person, maybe the person's employee number. They will check budget for that department. There will be an approval line manager or something. It probably would be tied to somebody's as a staff. Everybody is tied to there's a word. If we had finance people here, everybody is tied to they call them expense line. Like, I don't know how to put it. The word for it. Now, in organizations, every staff is tied to somewhere in the finance line, like your cost, there's a word for it in finance. Your cost element in an organization. So they always put everybody into a bucket of whole so that whatever you do goes into that cost. There's a terminology for it. I can't remember, but we can leave that. But my point are you understanding what I'm saying? That app will be collecting data. So a name of somebody, maybe the person's email, approval line manager, your department, your employee ID. What other kind of data would they be collecting from an expense management app? They will have receipts, invoices. What other thing?
Expense data.
Expense data. What do you mean by expense data? Sorry.
I said the specific amounts.
Yeah, value. Okay, what do you mean? Yes. Okay, the expense value, right? Yeah. So is it 10 naira expense, whatever? So let's work with this. Now you're sitting as a stakeholder there, and the guys who are going to develop the app are engaging the business to ask, okay, you want this thing to be automated, you want it to be transparent, you want it to disburse. Because remember, these are the features that the guys in the Power Apps are going to be making it. So based on the functionality, would you know the kind of data that will be required? So as a data person, for you, your curiosity is information, data is being collected and processed, and I need to make sure that we're adhering to compliance. So as they are mentioning all the things they want, or to make it to optimize process, that means it needs to go to line manager and approving body. So in your head, how is it going to go to the line manager and approving body? How will they get notified? They'll get notified through their email. So email is required there, right? How will you know that Joy in IT, who is level 1, is expensing 10,000 and 10,000 is above her level, right? So the only way you will know if 10,000 is above my level is through my employee ID and probably my line manager, right? So you probably need an approving body or what my budget item is. That's what, as a data person, that's what you're checking. Oh, they want it to be transparent. So who will see what? Is there a maker checker? Who is going to be the final approving part? In all of those conversations, would you be listing out the data that will be collected? Now, Miriam, all this data that has been collected, based on what you have learned in the 5 weeks, what do we call this data?
The SITs.
Good. So now that we have collected SITs, as a data person, what do you want to do with your SITs?
Can label them.
You want to classify them.
Yes.
So that you can label them. Exactly. Now, there are different ways that we classify our SITs, right? What are the ways that we can use to classify them? We use patterns.
Yeah.
And those patterns can either be through keywords, regular expressions, key dictionaries, or document fingerprinting. So that one, you keep it one side. Now, while they were having this conversation, you wanted to also ask them, this data that you are collecting, where are you going to keep this data? My system has frozen again, sorry. In the conversation, they were mentioning, we'll collect this. Then you go back to the Power Apps guy. All these things, this app you want to build, where are you going to store this app? What's wrong with my system? 1 minute, thing will hang. Where are you going to store, publish it in the app directory? Okay, that's fine. Where would this data be stored? and they'll tell you maybe a SharePoint list, which is what most people will use in project because they're all elementary. In real world scenario, somebody will tell you a database and probably begin to ask what type of database. AWS, SQL, Azure, SQL, Cosmos DB. Are you getting? This is now for real life. I can bet you nobody will be using this in the project, right? Most of them will be using SharePoint list. But in real life, this is what you'll be asking. Where are you going to store the information? So they'll tell you SharePoint list, fine. Now remember, because they said they wanted it to transparency optimize, they probably will make the workflow be that when somebody goes and imputes an expense and says sent, it will go to his line manager. So his line manager will get an email notification. So for you, and that email notification, you need to ask them, what are you putting in that email notification? Are you just going to say, Joy is requesting approval, and a link that I will click from the email that will take me to the app, or from the email, I will be able to see that Joy is asking for approval for 100K. And if I just click approve from the button on the email, automatically it will trigger the approval. As a data security person, why do you need to know that? Because if we push a phishing attack, so you need to understand where your role is coming. If the CFO's account has been compromised through phishing email, and a junior officer's account too has been compromised, and they push an approval to the CFO, and because the organization's own way of improving transparency, disbursement optimization was that make life easy, a CFO cannot go and be logging into application, let him get an email, and when he clicks approved in the email, that thing gets approved. That's fine. You hear organizations make those kind of requests. But as data security people, we say, what is the risk to that? So you need to understand what your Power Apps guy wants to deploy. Your job is not to change the wheel now. You're doing a project. Your job is to say, whatever he's deploying, I'll put security controls in place. So if he says, my response to optimize finance operation is that I will do email notification, and when they get the email notified, just by clicking the approved in their email, it approves it. You now need to know that email becomes an important location for you that you need to track, that will get this kind of sensitive information. Under here, email becomes a critical point too, as where data is stored. I have not gone to Purview. I am doing design, which is where the major work. These are the guys who earn the big bucks in data security. Before you worry about who is going to implement it, because you need to know how to put this concept in place. Then you now say, okay, somebody should go and apply this. You will define what they will apply. So I've put email, I've put SharePoint site. Like I said, I doubt the guys will use
So I can
database.
show your screen.
You guys are not seeing my screen.
No, please.
You can't see your screen. I thought you were just explaining.
Jesus. Sorry.
No.
Sorry. Been writing since linking you guys are saying. So you didn't see from the beginning. Did you guys see
No.
from when we
No. I was taking notes, but even though that's not my team, I wish my team is being done.
Okay, I'll start from the beginning. So that I will know if people were following. I'll start from the beginning. The first thing we said is what type of data is processed. So give me 5, 6 data that is processed and generated. You said name.
Received.
You said name. We don't need age.
You
Department.
said received.
Role, department.
Yeah, department or role. The person's budget. Sometimes they call it budget. Everybody is tied to a budget ID or something in finance. Sorry, I've done this kind of project before, so I'm struggling not to give you guys all the answers. Everybody is tied to it.
Value.
Yeah, expense value, the invoice, or the
No, I think
receipt.
some might even maybe your account number or something, because some people, in some
Pardon?
companies, some might even need your account number, because in some companies you spend the money yourself and then they refund to you.
But most times they have your account number now. You're a staff.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So that's why, remember, that's why I said that it's not you that is going to think out this data. We're only just thinking it here because I want to put context. Sit with your stakeholder, which is the Power Apps person. The Power Apps person is the one who has invited you, not even you, the user, which you guys don't know that the user here now is your project team who gave people this project. That's why they put you security in the conversation as the stakeholders. But security will now have a meeting with the automation people to say, what do you want to do? Because the automation people are the ones who will be rated on those conditions that we saw: transparency, disbursement. They are the ones who are going to be rated by that. You are not going to be rated. You are going to be rated on how you are securing what they have done. So that Power Apps person would be saying, what is the most simplified way I can need? So in that instance, they won't be asking for account number again, because they know that this person is a staff. Finance has your account, right? And logically, policy, nobody pays you money into an account that is not already in the system by policy. That's how you control insider fraud, right? So you will say in the ERP already have this person's account number. So once it's been approved, the person just gets disbursed into the account. That's how they track it. So nobody's going to ask you for account number. So in that instance, you won't worry. It's what they will tell you now. What you can do is, if the person is now not putting some entries that you know that how can you be optimized? You don't have email, for instance. How will people get notified, right? If they don't, for instance, which I doubt they will have email. That's where you will now throw in your suggestion. But they will come to you on what they would, this data fields that they will be requiring for. Right, you'll be asking them, can I see the information that you're going to grant? They will give you the data fields, and what you'll be asking is, if no one is clear, or if you feel this one is ambiguous, you can ask, why do you need this information for just an expense? Is this not too much information, or is this not an irrelevant information to this process, or is this not just making because for every data that is collected, processed, is your responsibility to secure. So you need to understand why they're collecting it. The moment where you understand everything, then you now ask yourself, this form my SITs. How do I protect this information? Right? I need to classify them. But before I classify, I need to know, where are they going to be storing this information? So now I know this information they'll be collecting, but where would they be storing this information? And I said, in a real world scenario, they'll be using more of databases, and nobody's going to use database in this project. So you hear them say things more like SharePoint sites. And then I'm saying, for you, if the Power BI person is very, very intelligent and knows what they're doing, they will be saying that they will automate by sending email notification, because that's typically what every organization wants. A CFO will not be going to be logging into app to be seeing if he has approval. He will prefer to get an email notifying him that there's an approval waiting for him, and then from that email he wants to action. So your email becomes a location that stores this sensitive information, right? And then even the Power Apps itself. But again, to streamline this project so you don't kill yourself, you might not worry about how to protect, because we didn't discuss about Microsoft Cloud Apps. We talked about it subtly, where we said that you can use Purview in Microsoft Cloud Apps. But if you wanted to protect the Power Apps that they will be creating, then you need to go into the Microsoft Cloud Apps to utilize the labels that you've created, and that will be taking you outside. As we continue in the community, we'll be breaking each of these things down. I'm happy to jump on weekend calls and just explain some of these things as you could grow yourself, for those who want to take this further. So I would recommend that you can just explain this, put this as an explanatory in your presentation, where our scope as data security was to worry about the locations that store the data. That's how I would present it if I was in your team. And we know that we can actually protect the app itself using the Microsoft Cloud Apps, but for the scope of our project, we did not look into protecting this. So that way I tell the team that I know that you can use Purview to protect an app itself, but it was not in my scope. And then those score you additional points. So you are focusing more on this location, the SharePoint, and the email. And then you now explain again why you focused on there, right? Notification will be sent. If phishing attack has happened on email, that's one of the entry points where that information can go to. So you want to protect those kind of informations there, and then the actual location that has this data stored, right? So that's it. Now, once we have the sensitive information type, we know the locations. What else do we want to do? We want to now break it down as the architect to say, how do I want to classify this data? And that's where it's up to you. So I have given 2 examples today. I talked about the school. I talked about the lawyer contract team. The lawyer contract team, I said contracts are always done with Microsoft Word. So there'll be a template most times. So they can use document fingerprinting. For the school, I said if it's registration form, it's a template they'll use. But for like the expense, this thing, you can now choose to say invoice. We don't have invoice, like somebody went somewhere, made an expense and is bringing an invoice. There's no unique way. So do we want to create a pattern like that when they are uploading it? Do we bind something? Okay, I'm trying not to go too complex so that I don't create confusion for you guys. Sorry. Okay, let me for the most simplified way. Expense ID. So one thing that you need to find out from the Powerhouse guy, I'm sure the Powerhouse guy will create their, this thing is going to be like a form. So it's going to have maybe an expense ID, right? So you can use that as your unique identifier for their form. So it's not a form that you can upload, but it's a form that when they are done, it will go into the SharePoint repository as expense ID, Kiniko. And you now ask them for that pattern. So if that pattern is 3 capital letters, 2, you can use a regular expression to identify this. So we've classified, we've known the location. Now we want to now break down and say, are we going to, how do I identify these SITs? Remember, these SITs on their own can be for any other thing. But in relation to the expense management, I can say that all of them will be inside a form, and that form would be an expense form. And the Power Apps person has said that for every form he's creating a unique expense ID. And her expense ID sequence is XYZ. So I'm going to use a regedit. Or I'm going to use a keyword. You can use, don't kill yourself too much. It's project. You can say, I'm going to use a keyword, expense. All you just want to do is show that you understand the concept. So you can say, I'm going to use expense as my keyword and use that to create your SIT. Sorry, I'm very, very hands-on, so I don't want to make life very difficult for you guys, calling too much nomenclature. But if I was in a real world scenario, those are how I would be drilling the automation team. That's why I don't want to get carried away. Sorry. So back to what I'm saying here is we've identified the SITs. How do you want to identify the SITs? There'll be a form on the Power Apps, and that Power Apps will have an employee expense ID. Ask the guy to give you what the sequence of the expense IDs, and you can use a regular expression, or you can just use expense as keywords to do it. Don't stress yourself. As long as you can defend that in team, is a project that helps you to now go back to your purview and create your Power App. So you come to your purview, and the first thing you want to do is you want to create your sensitive information type. You want to create your label. Again, like I said, your label is you. You're the one that decide what you want to call it, and you want to publish your label. At the time when you are creating your label, it will be asking where do you want to point it. Remember, you've identified that these guys are on SharePoint or email, so it's up to you. You can use files, you can use email, you can use SharePoint. Publish it there. Who do you want to assign it to? this is where the role-based access control comes in. Now, remember, they put you in a team, so you can now say to them, now, remember, the team is the team setting up the app. The team is not the one using it. So as the data security person, what you can do here in role-based access control is show them and say, we identify the key stakeholders that use this. Users, finance, because that's what the Power Apps guys will be doing in their approval flow. Users, finance, and maybe executive office, which most times is CEO and EDs if it's a bank or whatever, because you have approving, they have what most organizations have, approval limits. So I don't know what the Power Apps person wants to do, but it's all up to them how they want to do that, their flow. Again, based on them. So whatever they tell you, if they come and say, this app, I'm going to create it in such a way that if somebody has 50,000, it will approve by their land manager. But if they have 200,000, it will go to the finance team. But if they have 1 million, it will go to the CEO. The moment somebody is saying that to you, you are coming to your role-based access control and you are categorizing it and saying that means there's a finance is involved, executive office, and then the actual users, who can be anybody who is feeling that, right? So these are process. So I can now come and say, because a user can be anybody who log into the system, but when it's finance, am I saying that it's going to one person in finance or going to the finance department? Then I will need a group called finance department at whatever the company name is of your tenant that they gave you. Executive office, is he saying that it will go to somebody directly, or is it going to go to a group of people for approving, right? And then if it's going to somebody, then you have an account that you want to call CEO, or one of you would be acting as the CEO for that flow. So when the Power Apps people are demoing their own application, saying that, oh, Joy came, created, they'll be showing, they'll open the app, say created it, he went here, he now went to the finance team, they now approved, and then he went to the CEO, the CEO approved, you know, they'll clap for them. Then you, when you're coming at that point to show it, you either be showing an email that was not received here, and on that email, the email, because of that condition that you put, which is expense or the reg edit, would have a label showing on top, highly confidential, if that's what you used, or confidential, or if that's what you used, or restricted, whatever label you put there. And if you should into a team called finance department. Now inside that finance department, you put me there. So I'll be showing my screen to the project team that I received the email, even though they went to finance department, because I'm a member of the finance department. And when I heard the email automatically came with a label, highly confidential, because it's matching our SITs that we created behind using the pattern expense. And so it comes in showing highly confidential, because that's what we categorize this kind of thing. We also went further to say that once a label has highly confidential, you can't be able to print it or do not forward. Now, that depends on whether that's what you did at the back end. And at that point, you demo to them trying to do print and it will fail, or demo to them trying to do not forward. So that's another way you're showing the action of your labels and your policy. Is it making sense, please?
Yes, it is.
Janet and Miriam, are you happy?
Yes. Thank you, ma.
So you need to sit down and say, what do I want to showcase? You cannot do everything. That's what I'm telling you. Probably the use case is endless. They've given a use case. So take this use case and say, what do I want to show in this my use case, right? I've called out things for you. So many things I've been showing here now for you people. I'm just giving you people expo in this class.
Except my group. Oh.
I'm not going to do another one. This is the fourth project I'm showing. I'm not going to show any. No. Sorry, I'm trying to show one more thing. I don't know why the thing is. Sorry, I'm trying to open it now. So this will be I will ask all of you, try and show SITs, sorry. Try and show SITs, categorizing it, calling it out that, oh, this X application was generating XYZ type of data, and their SIT categorize is not the word, sorry. Outlined SITs in use. Then you want to show the types, right? Sorry, it's not the types, you want to classify. So you're either using what type of patterns. So focus on keyword or reg expression if you know how to use it, or document fingerprinting. This is another thing to show. Another thing to show is labels. So you can do labels with protection or with no protection. Don't kill yourself. Choose the one that is for you. Another thing to show here is auto labeling if you can, for those who can. Another thing you want to show, if you can show now, is assigning to specific users. So that's where your role-based access control is. Another thing you want to do is yeah, action, protection. You want to either do not forward or print, and that's it. And if we have some people who are very, very intelligent, they might want to show I'm not that very intelligent, so if I'm the one that will not do, I don't like book, but you might want to now show duration. So on the policy you can say it should expire. It doesn't have time, so you can't show this. It has days. So if you want to do this, you probably will create another one that will expire, and you won't be able to show it during the demo. Yeah, you can do it beforehand and send it, and then just show expiration. It's up to you. You can play around this where you assign that the DLP, the content should expire, expiration date, if you want to do this. But I'm saying that these are just things that you can pick out to want to show, and as you analyze, you identify each of these. So I've talked about this in three different. I've talked about the school, I've talked about the lawyer, I've talked about the expense now, and I've done everything here. So I believe with this, you should be able to showcase what you have, at least some key things that you have learned. If you want to push it further, push yourself further, you can go and do retention. But hey, don't kill yourself. You can't learn everything in 5 weeks. If you know this, if you can showcase 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, 1, 2, 3, if you can do label, fine. But if you can do 1, 2, 3, assign role based and protection, I think you're good to go. It's a good foundation for you to start. All right, we've exceeded our time by extra 1 hour. We were done with the class, but I'm happy to jump on anybody's group. So if your group needs any help, but I'm not going to I don't like people that look for easy way out. Please call me to the call if you have engaged with the stakeholders, you have gotten certain information, but you just need direction. I will help. If you come into the call to practically lament, I will not help you out. I like people who want us to, who would have bit of work and then need me to help guide them, because you can do it. I know you all are very brilliant people and you can do it. So you need to be able to overcome the fear. It's not a apple for apple. We want to understand if you can apply the knowledge. So you all can apply it in different ways, but the concept is still the foundation. So I'm happy to come into any team that would have any issue during the course of the week, and just say, okay, where are you guys? How do I help you refine what you're doing? And if you are also trying to implement it now and you're getting errors, I'm also happy to join and we'll troubleshoot it together. But please don't complain. It's part of the work. In real life, this is what you'll be faced with. Okay. Any questions?